All right, guys, part two of the chapter one lecture. I want to look now at implications of convergence. There are these 8 implications. We want to look at each of them in turn. Media organization changes, media type changes, media content changes, media use, media distribution, media audience, media profession, and attitude and value changes. So let's look at media organization changes. I've already talked about this a little bit. This trend toward concentration. These large media companies buying up the smaller companies, or in some cases, 2 big companies merging, like with Time and Warner. That's a good example of a merger, right? There was at one time there was Time and Warner, but now it's Time Warner, right? But what happens is they create these huge companies, and it creates a type of oligopoly. An oligopoly is an economic structure in which a few, or a relative few, very large, very powerful, and very rich owners control an industry or a set of industries. And that's kind of what we have now in the media industry in the United States, and really in much of the Western world. And there are similar patterns really throughout the world. Media type changes. We no longer know what a radio program is, for instance. I mean, we do, but it's, the lines have been blurred. It's not as easy to decipher. I actually did a radio interview a couple of days ago. Occasionally, I'm asked to do interviews on either television or radio or whatever about Egypt, about the Egyptian political situation, and so I was contacted the other day. It was yesterday, actually, Friday, and it's Saturday right now. You're probably watching this in some other time, obviously, but it's like Saturday, May. What is today? The 23rd. So I was contacted yesterday by a radio station, and I did this interview on the radio. But when I shared it with people, and I went online and I shared. I think I sent out. I sent out a link for people to listen to it live. But it was on the internet, so people are listening to me. Some people, I'm sure not that many people listened, but those who did listen listened not on their radio devices, they listened on the internet. So if you're sitting at your computer now and you turn on a radio, turn on a live stream, does that count as listening to the radio? I don't know. I mean, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But the point is, you get the idea. And now you can save stuff. You can, these radio stations now, they do podcasts. So I like to listen to this network in Minneapolis, St. Paul, called KFAN. It's the sports network. I think I told you guys this in the introduction. I'm a big Minnesota sports fan, like the Vikings and the Timberwolves and the Twins and the Wild. And so I'm just going to show this to you. But so I have the iHeartRadio app, which is the best app ever. If you don't have it, I mean, it's great. I like listening to radio. I like listening to, especially talk radio. So what I have, basically, I have a set of favorites here, and you can see it's got this guy. Okay, this is one of the guys I listen to. I don't know if you can see this. Paul Allen. He's got a show, right? So I can just go through here. I don't know if you can see this or not, but I can just scroll through and listen to all of his programs. There's the May 22nd program and May 21st, May 20th. He's got all the programs. You can go back forever and you can listen to it. And I'm listening on my phone. So does that count? Am I listening to the radio? I guess I am. But we no longer use. The funny thing is, we're listening to the radio, but we're not even. I don't even own a radio. I seriously. Do we own a? I don't think we own a radio. We might have a clock radio somewhere, but we don't. Even that we use for a clock. We use as a clock. We wouldn't use it as a. I mean, I haven't listened to a radio in a long, long time. So, this is one of the changes that has occurred in this area of media type, and this underscores what the authors mean by media type changes. Also, we've talked about this also in part one, but print and broadcast are kind of merged on the internet now. And that creates this kind of interesting dynamic and dilemma, because In the US, for instance, broadcast speech is more restricted. Have you noticed that? There are certain things you can't say on TV. Have you noticed how after like 10 o'clock at night, um, they allow different kinds of content because there are, the kids are asleep or they should be asleep. So there are certain words that you can say on TV after 10 p.m. that you can't say in the middle of the afternoon. In TV, have you noticed how there are no you've never seen a cigarette advertisement on TV, have you? Not in our lifetimes. I don't remember when this was banned, but it's against the law. You cannot do a TV ad like Marlboro doesn't do any TV spots because it's against the law. So there's a restriction there. But they can advertise in print. So now, what do we do about the internet? Because now it's like it houses broadcast and print in the same websites, in the same space. So should they be restricted like broadcast, or should they be a little bit freer like print? That's just an interesting question for you to think about and ponder. Media content changes. This is another type of change. You now have these weird things that we've had to accustom ourselves with, like hyperlinks. So now, and all of you know what it is. Like you click on, like if you're scrolling through a web page or whatever, you'll see like these blue letters or whatever, a different color. And you know what it means now, that if you slide your mouse and your pointer over to those letters, it's going to allow you to click on something and take you to another web page. And that's really kind of changed the game now. I remember I wrote an article about a year and a half. I didn't know how to do a hyperlink. I'll be honest. Maybe you know. I now I know, but a year and a half ago I did not know how to do this. And so I sent them the article and I had all these references. And they were like, and it's going to be published online, right? It's this online political, like a political science site. And they're like, please include hyperlinks. I'm like, how do I do that? And the guy actually had to show me, the editor showed me how to add hyperlinks, and then I went and did it. But now everywhere I want to refer to something or cite something in that article and all the other articles I've written, it links to other web pages. And that's kind of cool. But that's really kind of changed the game in a good way in some cases, but also in a bad way. Because let's be honest, it's kind of annoying when you sometimes you click on something and you meant to go to an article, but then an advertisement pops up or a survey or something, and you don't want to be there. And now they're so slick with it, it's really annoying. But like you click on the X to X out, and it doesn't close. That opens another one. It's like ridiculous. So, but so now you have to be smarter than the computer now, like to figure out how to close these pop-ups that just keep popping up. But anyways, so hyperlinks, that's another example of how, or that's one example of how content has changed. Digitization, that's a major factor. Obviously, the process in which media are made into computer readable form. So everything's digitized now. Everything's online. Everything's on the computer. And this is why we have this on-demand culture. We don't even, people don't, I mean, some people do, but like if you're a fan of like the Big Bang Theory, you could wait until, I don't even know I like the Big Bang Theory. I have no idea when it comes on. Like literally, I have no clue on like what night it comes on. I know it's on CBS, but because when I watch the Big Bang Theory, I just watch it on TBS. Or what most people do, it's on demand, right? So you just get on your Netflix and you just watch when you want to watch, right? Or you go onto some website, Hulu or whatever, and you watch when you want to watch. You go onto YouTube, you watch reruns of this and reruns of that, and so we have this on-demand culture now where we watch and listen to what we want to watch and listen to all the time, right? It used to be back in the day when you wanted to listen to music. I mean, it was just a little bit more difficult. Now, I mean, you got your phone. You just go on to iTunes, you download the song or you download the album. You can listen to it whenever you want. So it just makes things a lot easier, and we have this on-demand culture. And another change that has occurred is content is now more easily changed and manipulated. So in some cases, you can actually edit content online. Like think about Wikipedia. That's just a public encyclopedia. Any one of us could go onto any Wikipedia page and just start editing it, right? For better or for worse. And that's why you have inaccuracies with Wikipedia, right? But which, by the way, brings me to a point. Please don't ever cite Wikipedia in like a paper that you write for my class. If other professors allow it, fine. I don't allow Wikipedia. If you want to cite something that's on Wikipedia, go to the original source and cite the original source. That's, I guess, neither here nor there. But you can ask yourself, in the future, are books going to become exclusively online endeavors? That's just something to think about. Will we, 20 years from now or 50 years from now, will we have hard copy books? Maybe we will, maybe we won't, maybe we won't. Media use changes. We can take the media with us wherever we go. We've talked about this already in the part one. The devices are small, they're handy dandy, they're convenient. You can be connected at all times, and we are. And you have to ask yourself, is this healthy? Is it healthy that I can check my email all the time? Is it healthy that I can, check my Facebook page? I mean, people do this, like they'll have their phone next to them while they sleep. And I mean, I've done this before when I've had like an important, when I've been expecting some really, really important message. I'll like have the phone, and you can't sleep and you wake up every hour and you're looking at your phone. And so we have to ask ourselves, is this increased connectedness necessarily a good thing? In some ways it's good, but is it absolutely good? Is it healthy? Is it always healthy? Media distribution has also changed. The audience is more engaged now. They can produce content more easily. We talked about that. You can, you could produce a YouTube, produce something for YouTube or whatever. You can write something on a blog, right? You don't have to just sit back passively and consume content. You can produce content. And user-generated content has threatened global media corporations because they don't have a monopoly on what information is out there. They don't have as much control. So, and that's threatening. It's a scary proposition to a lot of these companies. And so they've had to really adjust on the fly. I mean, YouTube was terrifying for like music. People that, like these music companies that make music videos. Like now everybody just goes on to YouTube and watches the video. So what did they do? They just, it's like if you can't beat them, join them. So they're just now, they have their own YouTube pages and YouTube channels. And you can go there and watch them. And then the money comes back through because, now YouTube is now for profit in the sense, there's advertisements on YouTube. That's not going away anytime soon. I think it'll increase exponentially. I bet in 5 years it's going to be really annoying to be on YouTube because those advertisements that you can click out of, you won't be able to click out of them. Those advertisements that are 15 seconds long, they'll be 30 seconds or 45 seconds or whatever. So, but anyways, and now the music companies look at the videos as a way of kind of just drumming up business. They're like, okay, well, they're watching our videos, so it's a good thing. Doesn't really matter whether they're watching our video on MTV or they're watching our video on YouTube. And eventually they hope that people aren't just going to sit there and listen to music, on YouTube. But that's one of the risks. I do that when I go to the gym. I don't have every album or every song that I like. So I'll just go on to YouTube. It's got my gym, they've got a Wi-Fi connection. And I just type in whatever song I want to listen to on YouTube and I listen to it. Right? I could watch the video too, but I don't do that. I'm working out or whatever, so I'll just be listening to the song that I want to listen to on YouTube. So, media distribution changes. Also, implications for quality control. Have you thought about quality control? I'm sorry, my throat is really dry. Think about Twitter. Think about the news that's posted to Twitter. and Facebook by these citizen journalists, sometimes it's a really good thing. They can, if you're just like out and about and you see something happen, you tweet about it, like you're there before the news people are there. So now the public or those people that follow you got some information really quickly. The problem is that there's not much quality control. So you have all these citizen journalists out there, and they're not certified, they're not trained in journalism, they don't have licenses, and so they publish things that are inaccurate or unprofessional in one way or another, and so you have to be very careful. Think about media audience changes. Traditionally, media communication was mostly one way. Audiences were more passive, as we've said, right? Today, media consumers are more active, arguably. They have the ability to communicate with one another. They have the ability to produce content. What are the implications of that? What is that doing to us, right? We could engage in all kinds of research about the implications of these kinds of changes. Another thing to think about is how audiences have fragmented. They've divided. We've talked about this on-demand culture. We talked about the daily me. Well, you no longer have to sit back and just watch whatever's on television. You can just customize your media experience now. And so people have just kind of fragmented. And you notice this. You notice it online. You're hanging out in these, whatever, your Facebook page or your Twitter. It's like-minded people. You're watching the same programs as the people in your circle, right? And everything outside of that circle. I mean, you kind of live in this bubble now. Politically, you'll notice this as well. I've noticed this. With the Egyptian political situation. Very divisive. I've noticed it with, the Republicans and Democrats here in the United States. It's like, I have friends that are like hardcore one way or the other, and you look at their page, like everybody on their page agrees with them, or most of the people, right? Because it's like, okay, well, clearly what's happened is that folks have gravitated toward one another online, and so audiences, again, online, and with respect to entertainment media, they've fragmented. And this is the risk. This is a quote from your book that I think is telling. We risk becoming small groups of like-minded individuals who do not interact with other groups and who choose to receive only the news and information that reinforce their beliefs and values. That is the risk, and it's a big risk. Changes to the media profession. There are divisions between print and broadcast journalists traditionally, but now those divisions are kind of disappearing. This is one of the things that you'll realize if you are going on into a journalism career. I know some of you probably are. You're going to be trained. You're going to be expected to know and be comfortable with print, audio, and video. This is what's happening now. Journalism schools across the country and across the world are teaching journalists how to write for print and then also how to shoot video, how to produce for radio, because, again, convergence. Convergence has influenced how news is produced and how people are trained. Citizen journalism, which is something that I just talked about on the last slide. These audience-generated feedback and news coverage. So you have people, just average Joes. They're not professional journalists, but they're out somewhere and they see something happening. So they tweet about it or they blog about it or whatever. A great example of this is the revolution that happened in Egypt back in 2011 when the Egyptians went to the big square. You probably saw it on TV. I was actually there. It was a great experience. The square there, it's called Tahrir Square or Freedom Square, and they gathered and they just stayed there for 18 days to oust a dictator, Hosni Mubarak. But what happens is it became very difficult for journalists to deliver news because in some cases they were banned by the dictatorship. The dictatorship at one point shut down the internet. And so you had these citizen journalists like hacking and doing these weird things to get back online and to share information. And a lot of the information that people got on that revolution during those 18 days was from citizen journalists. Now, the big media players got there, and they eventually, I mean, they did their job. CNN and Al Jazeera, but BBC and others. But the citizen journalists played a really, really big role. But again, that issue with quality control. How can we be sure that what they're saying is accurate? Attitude and value changes. This is another change that's occurred. There are disagreements over whether or not it's necessary to inform audiences who's paying for a particular blog. Think about that. What do you think? Is it okay for employers to monitor their employees' social media accounts or the prospective employee, people that are applying for jobs? Do you think that's ethical? What about the blurring line between work and personal time? Right? There are disagreements about this. Some people think it's great. I get to go home and work from home. Some people are like, no, because now you never leave your job alone. You're constantly in your email. You're constantly responding to concerns. You're constantly connected with the people back at work. So you're never really off, right? It also works the other way though too, right? Because people now are at work. Don't do this, but you'll be at work or whatever, and instead of working, you're on your Facebook page and you're on YouTube, like watching reruns of In Living Color and Saturday Night Live and whatever, and it's like, and then your boss like peeks over your shoulder and is like, Johnson, what are you doing? And then you get fired and it's bad news. So don't do that. I'm realizing doing this this online bit, this recording, it's really hard. I try to interject humor into my lectures. If you've taken a class with me before, some of you have, you know that I like to try to be funny. Now, I'm not saying I'm funny. Usually I'm not. Usually the jokes don't go over very well and people end up just looking at me funny. But what I'm realizing is that in this particular situation, I have there's no human interaction. I can't see your faces. So it's kind of hard. It's hard for me to be funny as it is because I'm just not very funny. But it's harder to be funny when I'm just staring. I'm just staring at my laptop computer in my empty home. Okay. Yeah, I live a very exciting life, don't I? It's Saturday night. It's 7:30. My wife and kids are at a dinner, and I'm just sitting here recording a lecture, and I'm about to post it to YouTube. Pretty exciting. Let's see. What else do we got here? Is it ethically acceptable for advertisers to use cookies to monitor our internet and shopping habits and then employ behavioral targeting? What's behavioral targeting? That's when advertisers, it's the use by advertisers of consumer buying patterns and preferences in advertising campaigns. I just gave you an example in that part one when I mentioned the whole Minnesotans in Alabama t-shirts. I get those like sent to me or whatever on my Facebook news feed and all kinds of other stuff. It's kind of weird, but they know what you've purchased. They know where you've browsed or whatever. I bought some stuff on Overstock.com, and it's a great website, by the way. But I get all kinds of emails now, and in my Facebook news feed for products that are similar or whatever, and it's just kind of weird. Amazon.com kind of freaks me out because back in the day they used to send you an email that would say something like, "Dear customer." Now they say, "Dear Mohammed." And they're like, "We know that you purchased such and such book by such and such author on such and such day. We thought that you might be interested in this new book that the same author has released." I'm just like, whoa, that's kind of freaky. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that, but that's where we are. So, and you just have to be cognizant of that. So there are all kinds of disagreements here, really ethically, about a lot of these different issues. As I mentioned, the lines between interpersonal and mass communication have been blurred. And that's one of the things that's talked about in chapter 1 and elsewhere in the book. But digital technologies are what have helped blur the lines between interpersonal and mass communication. Let's just take a step back here and define interpersonal communication. It is communication between two or more persons. It is usually interactive, flowing two ways. So think about a conversation that you have with your friend. Two people, you're face to face. You say something, your friend says something. There's like this flow. It's interactive, right? You feed off of one another. It's not anonymous. That's very important. Interpersonal communication is not anonymous. You know who the person is that you're speaking with, right? Or at least you have the ability to ask them, like, hey, who are you? Right? Like, what's your name? The responses are usually really fast. Sometimes they are immediate. Messages are adjusted based on the responses that are received. So you're feeding off of one another, as I mentioned. It can take place through a medium, like a phone, or not. It could just be face to face. Think about chatting with someone. You know, they don't really have, do they have chat rooms still? I don't even know. But think about, you could chat with somebody on Skype, for instance, or whatever. Or you're texting someone. Think about the limitations associated with that as compared to being face to face, right? It's a big deal. When I'm face to face with you, I can see, for example, I can see your facial expressions. I can hear the tone in your voice. But when you text me, and have you ever had this happen to you before? Like, you say something in a text, and the person on the other end completely misunderstands it, and you're like, whoa, because they think you were being rude or mean or whatever. And that's why you have to be real careful. And this is what have we done? We've invented this way to make it easier. We have these emoticons, right? Like we have the smiley faces, or the sad faces, or the surprised faces, or the angry faces. You know, we use the exclamation marks and capital letters and all these things to try to make it clear. But you don't have to do any of that when you're face to face, right? That'd be kind of crazy if you're face to face and you don't have to do that. People can just see your facial expressions and hear the tone in your the tone in your voice. Public speaking is very interesting. It's one to many, but it's not really mass. You know what I mean? Mass communication is like, and we'll talk about that in a second, but it's like one to a lot of people. You know, it's like CNN. That's mass communications. Like the ability of, for hundreds of thousands of people, or at least thousands of people, to hear or see something. But in a public speaking event, it's 20, 30 people, 100 people, a couple hundred people. Is that mass communication? Not really. It's still kind of interpersonal, because you still get the body language and the facial expressions. You can still ask questions, but so it's almost like an in-between area. Mass communication is technology-based means of communicating between large numbers of people distributed widely over space and time. So CNN. CNN's in Atlanta. You're sitting in your home in Florence, Alabama, or even farther away. You're in Seattle, Washington, and you are watching CNN. And so are millions of others, or at least millions of others have the ability to watch if they so choose. And what facilitates that is technology. It's a technology-based means of communicating between large numbers of people distributed widely over space and time. And usually, look at the third bullet point here, usually it's one to many. Okay? The audiences are huge, but it's just one dude, not a dude literally, but like one organization that's delivering the message. That's a key aspect here. It usually involves a media company producing content desired by an audience and distributing that content to an audience that has very few ways to provide immediate feedback. That's one of the big differences between interpersonal and mass communication. You're very passive in a mass communication situation, aren't you? You can't like call or say something to Anderson Cooper and the CNN anchor, be like, Anderson, I really don't like what you're saying. If it's face to face, you can do that. But this is just mass communication. You're just kind of a number. Now you could go onto the website and say, express your disagreement or whatever, but that's just not the same, right? So it's kind of a one-way flow. It's not so. Whereas interpersonal is two ways, it's interactive, as we said. It's just one way with mass communication, and then it's also anonymous in the sense that the senders don't really know who their audience members are, and the audiences don't know who the senders are, right? At least they don't know them personally. Like who Anderson Cooper is or Bill O'Reilly, but you don't know those people personally, probably, right? So that's again one of the big differences between interpersonal communication and mass communication. So you have, and then as I mentioned, this element of passivity. Audiences are more passive because there's very little feedback. I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to stop again because I want to make the uploading process easy, and I'm going to do basically I'm going to finish this lecture in part 3. So stay tuned for part 3.